with CEOs and millionaires. I've never seen my vision be more crystal clear. Look in the mirror, see the change in who I used to be. I kept going, knew success would come eventually. But ask about me back then, they said I wouldn't make it. Nowadays they doubt less and tend to ask for favors. Poetic music, that's realness, don't let them tell you different. And if you ever lost in doubt, then follow your intuition. These words of wisdom is for those who's trying to find their purpose. Don't be living just to die, cause only death is certain. I'm working hard so I can toast to my accomplishments. Cause see, I lost it all and I ain't been the same since. I'm more focused, more ambitious, more everything. Grew up with nothing, now I appreciate the finer things. I know it's real when at the shows they ask for autographs. And now they know the name, they ain't gotta ask. Yeah. They ain't gotta ask.
Cool. All right. So the next guest on the podcast is a friend of mine from the military. We've known each other for quite a long time. Well, Mike, aka that Chillax dude, has been retired for the last couple of years, and he's been doing some really awesome things that I think other people kind of wish they would do in their lives. And he can tell you more about that, but 25-year plus veteran, retired, and you know, we all were in Colorado at some time, but he basically decided to walk the Camino El Santiago a couple times, a pilgrimage trek in the Pyrenees in northern Spain and southern France a couple times, and has been out in California and kind of traveling the country and really embracing what people are referring to now as the van life. And so he's going to talk a little bit about that and his experiences going from being a special forces operator to living on the beach and then just enjoying life in such a different way. So I appreciate the time, seriously.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. Hashtag van life, hashtag depressively bear.
Yeah, man, just promote anything you want, man, because I think your story's unique, and I think people should check out like what you're doing. Again,
thanks for having me on. My name is Mike Albrecht. Well, you know, we're in the Army together for the last remaining years of your time in the Army, and then I actually replaced you in one of the shops in battalion when they said, you need to get off a special forces team and go to a battalion staff. So I replaced you, and then you told me like, hey man, it's a great job. You can do lots of college classes. And then I was able to take a couple of college classes, but then, I was still stuck there in the salt mines, slaving away, and ran out the remaining probably 10 years of my career there. And you know how when we're downrange and like all you do is like Google cool places to go to or anywhere else that you're not, right? Right. And that's kind of what would happen to me. Like I could go to Africa or go back to the Middle East. And when you have downtime, you just want to think about places that you're not, or a life that is completely different. Like I couldn't imagine running around with a rucksack less than 50 pounds. I mean, that's mind boggling. Why would I do that?
Right.
So I started doing that. And after 25 years in the Army, I retired. And like most special forces guys, just kind of assumed that I would go into the military contracting world realm, because it's just like it's like our next evolution. Like, okay, we'll do what we've done for 20 plus years, but we'll just get paid 5 times more.
Right.
And I was definitely going to do that. And then I just found this little walk across Spain called the Camino De Santiago, and probably 180 days out from retirement, started Googling on it. And I'm like, you know what, that'd be a nice little chill walk. I mean, 500 miles, I can walk 500 miles. And then, I don't have to carry a 100-pound rucksack. 30 pounds? What? And so, I booked a ticket, did a little bit of Googling. Probably my biggest research was Facebook groups. And then landed, I retired April 30th, 2017. I was actually in Paris. I think I flew into Paris on World Day. So April 22nd, 2017. So the last portion of my separation leave. Toured Paris for a little while and then went down to a little town called Le Puy-en-Velay in France. It's actually the start of another Camino inside of France called the Via Podiensis. So it walks from Le Puy-en-Velay to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and it's 500 miles. And my intention there was to walk 30 days or about 500 miles alone, and then train back to Paris, fetch up my dad, and then we would do the Camino Frances, or the traditional Camino route from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Santiago de Compostela in Spain with my dad. Unfortunately, my dad had a stroke right about that time, I think early April, so maybe the 10th or so. So obviously you couldn't come with me, so I ended up just walking 1,000 miles, like wow, through France and Spain. But you meet people like on day one, and then so you start alone, and then you just grow this what you just begin to call a Camino family. With every kilometer, every day passed, and I, like a lot of SF guys for some reason, have pretty bad sleep apnea. But I totally refused to bring my CPAP machine. So like I quickly became known as a snoring guy. Like, and then finished that one, and then came back to the U.S. and I had already sold my house before I left.
Okay.
In that 16, 17 housing market in Colorado, where houses were flying off the shelves in mere hours. So
yeah. It's still like that, by the way, which is
okay, yeah. People keep moving for California out there.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, so just for folks that like have no idea what the heck we're talking about with the Camino El Santiago, can you maybe give like an overview of the tradition? Like, how long does it go back? Why do people do you think that do it? And then maybe some of the traditions along the way that you kind of encountered
Sure.
as you saw it.
Yeah, I guess like originally it was once a pagan pilgrimage of sorts, and then like 1,300 years ago, the Catholic Church tried to start usurping their way into it. Like, oh, pagan thing, we're gonna make it Christian, and the history or lore behind it is that there's a shepherd, and well, originally Saint James, one of Jesus' disciples, after he was not crucified, after he was killed, like some of his disciples allegedly grabbed his body and threw it on a ship and got it as far away from, I think, the Romans as they could. Their boat crashed off the coast of Spain, and then they thought they had lost his body. Well, like the next day or so, his body was allegedly raised to the surface, covered in seashells. And so then his disciples grabbed his body and hid it. And the body was hidden for hundreds of years. And then there was a star that appeared in the west or something. And a shepherd, I think, went to where that was. And I'm sure I'm totally butchering up the history.
No. I mean, but it's better than what most people probably have anyway. So.
Well, and they said, hey, this spot is, so they did some digging or looked in a cave, found what they believed were the remains of the Apostle James, and moved it to Santiago, where they ended up building a big cathedral over it. And there is a crypt there that, like, when you're able to tour the church or the cathedral, you can see what is supposed to be the Apostle James's crypt right there. It's pretty cool. And then there's the history of reclaiming the Iberian Peninsula from the Moors, and so the cross that is used to identify pilgrims of St. James is a pretty weaponized looking crucifix. It's pretty cool. It's just called the Cross of St. James, and and then there's like St. James the Conqueror, a whole bunch of history behind it. It's pretty cool. But then when you start the route in Saint Jean Pied de Port, which is well, first off, like in Europe or across the world, everyone always says that you start the Camino from your front door. So you just like put on a rucksack one day and walk out your front door, close the latch, and you're on Camino. So because of that, I ran into people walking from Russia, Germany, Poland. One girl I walked with briefly, she walked from Zurich, and so Zurich all the way. Like by the time I met her, she had been walking 54 days, and I'm like calculating back, like, well, it would have been snowing. And she's like, oh yeah, Switzerland in February is quite cold, and the snow is quite deep. And she was sleeping out of a poncho liner, or a poncho and poncho liner.
Jesus.
Pretty hardcore. Yeah. So some people really embrace the pilgrimage aspect of it and kind of make it one of suffering. Back in the olden days, medieval times, people could actually get out of prison sentences by being condemned to walk the Camino. So they would
oh, wow.
be sent back 1,000 miles and then walk the Camino. And at the end of it, they would do penance, and they would be, I don't know if hardened criminals or murderers were doing it, but like maybe thieves were told to walk the Camino. And it was a treacherous time back then. So, right. And it's fun to being a military guy and walking the route to see where ravagers might have like jumped you and robbed you of your possessions. Cause some of them go right through, like, you're like, oh, this is a terrible place to be walking, or ambushes. And the Pyrenees portion of the route, if you take it, is called the Napoleon route. So it's the route that Napoleon used to come or take into Spain all the time. And it's also what Charlemagne used to take into Spain. So very storied route. In the French part of it, you're walking by buildings that were built in the 1400s. And then Spain, old too, but like, you go through Pamplona, which is a walled city. In France, there's Navarrenx, which is a walled city. So it's really neat to see how like warfare, religion, and then just pilgrimages at all impact that. And then I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Way with Emilio Estevez and his father. That's a movie that kind of not Americanized, but brought the Camino de Santiago to American culture. There's just a story about a father whose son died on the Camino, and then he comes over to gather his remains, and then ends up walking the Camino himself and scattering his remains all the way to the ocean. So real touching story. And you see people, they try to bring that kind of not romance, but that kind of air to the Camino. Like they're there for a purpose. Like when I walk the Camino, people ask, oh, why are you walking the Camino? I didn't know you're Catholic. I'm like, well, I'm not Catholic, but I love wine and I love like cheese and I love meat. Like it seems like a perfect marriage.
Excuse me, I'm a chow hound. I just need to eat every 4 to 6 hours, and it's the best stuff around.
And then so you do that, and then you can walk all day, and like you can't get fat. It's awesome.
Yeah, it sucks that you weren't able to go with your dad with that. I'm lucky, like my dad's kind of young. Like he just is 62 now. And so like, so like wow. Very fortunate to still have like a decent relationship with him where we can still do stuff together. And he just retired from like government service as well this summer. What a great year to retire. And so he's just been chilling and kind of enjoying life. And I don't know how it is for you, but I'm really appreciating these moments more as I've gotten older. because you just don't know how many you have left, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when speaking of traveling and stuff like that, when you were growing up, did you do a lot of traveling with the family? Like, was that always something like in your kind of, you know, like lifestyle as far as that goes?
Yeah. I mean, because I think it was ingrained in me probably pre-birth, because my dad joined the Navy, went to Vietnam, and then when he was doing his time in the Philippines, he met my mom.
Mm-hmm.
So they would travel around the country on leave. They made it sound like he had all kinds of leave during the war or something. I'm like, what do you mean you're just traveling around the Philippines in the 70s? And then they came back to the U.S. and he had moved around a lot as a kid, so he kind of had a gypsy spirit of sorts. My grandparents, they moved just because they were going wherever the work was.
Right.
Back in the day where people moved for work. And then, well, when I was younger, my parents bought a van, and then we started doing these massive road trips because we were living in Iowa at the time. So we would go to wherever there were mountains. So we go to the South Dakota Black Hills, which I thought were mountains,
Mm-hmm.
and they are. But and then you go to Montana, you're like, oh, real mountains. And then grew up reading Louis L'Amour books, Hardy Boys books. So there's always adventure and travel, and the two were combined. And reading at far distant places. My dad is a Baptist minister, so we had missionaries always coming to the church when they're back in the U.S. They kind of drumming up money or church support, and they would talk about being in Mali or being in Brazil or being in Romania, and or smuggling Bibles across the Iron Curtain into East Germany, like just crazy things, high adventure and stuff like that. And then my parents were, we watched a lot of movies growing up, but they're always like war movies. So it's based in the Pacific or based in Europe. So I'm like, I want to go to these places.
Yeah.
So that was ingrained in me deeply. And then just when we bought a van, it was funny because I guess I didn't know this, but our family wasn't rich by any means growing up, probably lower middle class. And so we had this pretty badass tricked out conversion van for the early 80s. And nowadays they call it stealth camping. But then it was just like, well, we can't afford to stay at the Sheraton, so we'll stay in the Sheraton parking lot. So we just roll in and draw the shades, and a family of 5 was just sleeping in this van.
Holy crap.
In the parking lot. So this is always this joke that my dad would say, yeah, remember the time we stayed in Cody, Wyoming? Yeah, where'd we stay? Oh yeah, we stayed at the Sheraton parking lot. And we just joke about that. So then I thought it was kind of funny. It was actually my dad who suggested van life to me.
Really?
when I came back from the Camino, because I came back, it was July 2018, and just hopped on the Harley and started cruising around the country. And 5 months later, we're backed up to December. I'm like, ooh, it's getting cold. Dad's like, well, now what you gonna do, dummy? You already sold your house. I honestly didn't know. I was just kind of couch surfing with different Army buddies I had, and he's like, well, been on YouTube a lot lately, and have you heard of this thing, van life? I'm like, yeah, I know what van life is. What kind of parent suggests van life to their kid? Like 3-4 days later, I bought a van off of Craigslist for $3,000. So,
that's awesome.
And I stayed at the Walmart parking lot in true van life fashion, right there off of Powers, South Powers, Walmart in Colorado Springs.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. It was like 16 degrees that night, snowing. Had the Jeep and the van because I didn't know I had 2 vehicles. I didn't know how to shuffle the two. So.
Right. Jeez.
Craziness. Yeah.
What part of Iowa is your dad from, or is that just where he was living?
Well, that's where we were living. Like, so he grew up in Nebraska, just farm boy in Nebraska, and then that's where I was born. And then when he received the calling to become a minister, he went to Bible college in Ames, or south of Ames, a little town called Ankeny, and then right north of Des Moines. And then we moved south of Ottumwa, a little town called Bloomfield in southeast Iowa. Beautiful town. I still go there whenever I get the chance. My favorite people in the world there are there.
So my grandparents from my dad's side, they're from Waverly, Iowa, just north of Waterloo.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a Bible college there too. And that's like kind of what keeps the town going. Obviously it's gotten smaller and like a lot of younger folks have moved, but my dad, you know, he was driving back and forth there to take care of his parents, obviously, in their later years. And then, you know, he still has lots of friends from high school and stuff like that there as well. So they just went to like their anniversary, I think like 30th or 40, 50th anniversary, like 40th high school reunion. So
wow.
So yeah, it's crazy. Like I know a lot of folks that have like ties to Iowa. Like I never lived there or anything, but you know, it's one of those things where, like you said, like the values that I think like these small towns had, you know, that it resonates with you now, because I think it's something that may be from the past, but they still hold on to at least some of those things that we would think of middle America still having, you know, and so it always kind of resonates with me with that.
Absolutely. I actually know a lot of SF guys from Iowa. It's I don't know if it's they just raise patriots and but just good wholesome living, and I don't know, like good, the hunting's good, the bass fishing's great, and it's right in the middle of the country, so you can get to pretty near everywhere pretty cheap. So
right. And so with your dad having been Navy and kind of, you know, obviously finding his path through helping others, what initially made you like join the military?
Man, John Wayne's the Green Berets, man.
Really?
Like I saw it at a really young age, and then I read the Robin Moore book, probably in the 4th or 5th grade. As soon as I was old enough to get my own public library card, went down and read that like book, which is like very graphic in like gunfights and like all kinds of like interactions between human beings, even cadences that are sung in the military. I'm reading this as a 4th grader. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I want to be a Green Beret. And then especially because on my mom's side of the family, they have a history of like fighting the Japanese during World War II. So jungle warfare, and then all the influence of that, and then plus like in the Midwest, there are a lot of veterans. So you see them in church, whether they're Korean War, Vietnam, World War II vets, like right there in church. And then I guess growing up, my parents watched a lot of the world news, like Peter Jennings and Tom Brokaw. So you get to see like what's going on. And like I was a child during the Reagan era, so you get to these badass presidents with these incredible speeches of patriotism, and it really struck a chord with me as a young person. And I just kind of grew up always wanting to be a Green Beret, and then you know, it's such a lofty goal, especially coming from the civilian sector. So when I first joined the military, I didn't even join the infantry. I joined the Army as an interior electrician in 1992. And I had a crafty recruiter, or I was just really dumb. And he's like, what? Because like I was like, we knew an Army chaplain who was in the 82nd. And then we also knew an Army chaplain an Army surgeon who was in the 82nd. And the surgeon was like, yeah, if you want to be special forces, then you need to be a medic. And then as soon as you're done with that, go to OCS, become an officer. And I'm like, all right, cool. That's what I'll do. I'll join the Army, become a medic, and then become a special forces medic. and then I'll become an officer and I get all this play time on a special forces team. And then I go to the recruiting office and he's like, hey, you want to be a medic? Well, have you considered electricity? Because if you look at a house as a body and conduit as like veins and electricity, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. So, so this dummy entered the Army in 92 as an interior electrician, hated it. It was not what I expected out of a military experience. And then I never wanted to electrocute anyone to death. So I switched MOSs as soon as I was able to, became an infantryman. And then at least kind of put me on a little better path. But that was in the 90s. There was nothing going on in the 90s, really.
Yeah.
So I got out August 31st, 2001. And 11 days later, 9/11 happened. So I was pounding on the recruiting office door, and when they finally showed up at like noon that day, said, you got to get me back in. And it took them a month and a half to get me back in the Army because the entire U.S. male population was trying to get in the military at the time. And I came in. That was in 2001. I don't know if you recall. That was the year they combined the 11 series MOSs. So 11 hotels, 11 Mikes, they all became 11 Bravos or Charlies. So they just squinched back down to 2 infantry MOSs. So they literally told me that the infantry was full. I'm like, well, that is ridiculous. So they gave me a list of 5 MOSs, and like one was like being a cook, one was heavy canvas tent repair, and like just ridiculous MOSs. I'm like, who joins it? I'm like, wait. I first joined the Army as an electrician, so I'm not gonna talk to it smack. I came in as a cab scout, so then and I didn't really pay attention when I was at MAPS. I just wanted back in the Army so I could go to war. They sent me back to day 0 basic training. And then the drill sergeants actually saw my collars and like where I was wearing E6 and then I was wearing E5. And like, wait, are you prior service? I'm like, Rogers, drill sergeant. And like, oh, hell. And you're a staff sergeant. I'm like, yep. What was your one? It's 11 Bravo. I'm like, oh, hell no. I'm not going to. How long you been in? Since 92. And they're like, we are not going to have an E6 infantryman in basic training. So they said, we'll start you in day 1 AIT. And then when I showed up to AIT, the drill sergeants are like, oh yeah, hey, you're good, man. I'm like, well, I don't know how to turn on a Bradley, let alone open the door, let alone like, and they're like, you got this, man. You're a light infantryman. You'll never set foot on a Bradley. Well, a couple of months later, I PCS to Fort Hood and they stick me in heavy cab, which is all things Bradleys. And so I had to tell my platoon sergeant, like, hey, I don't know how to tell you this, but I don't know how to open a door on a Bradley. And he's like, what the hell? He thought I was like this complete shitbag. And I'm like, dude, this is my story. And then one of the other section sergeants there used to be a platoon or a drill sergeant at that same company it came out of in AIT. He called back there, yeah, Mike Albrecht, he's a good dude. And they're like, yeah, he doesn't know how to turn on a Bradley or even get in a Bradley. And they're like, yeah, because he's going to light cab. And they're like, nope, he just arrived here at heavy cab. Like, oh, yeah, don't worry, he'll catch on. So I caught on, but I hated wearing motor pool coveralls. Like when they issued it me at OCIE, I was like, what is this? And they're like, oh, they're coveralls. I'm like, yeah, but why? I mean, I'd been infantryman for 10 years by then. I'd never even been, I knew we had a motor pool, but I didn't know what happened there. And then, and then they wanted me to, that was the uniform. You put on these coveralls. And then, so I put them on. Like, yeah, I got them. The Jeep put them on. They're like, well, where's your unit patch? Where's your name tapes? I'm like, on coveralls? So yeah, I did a few months of that and went to the SF recruiting office there on Fort Hood and got the hell out of there. Went to selection in June 2002 and made it. And the rest is SF history.
Yeah, that's crazy that you had a month break in service and then 9/11 happened. I actually went to selection in October.
Like wow. That would have been intense.
So it was one of the highest like pass rates I think they ever had, because if if you can't get motivated after that, like you don't belong.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I just don't want to walk so far. Yeah.
Oh my God. It was crazy because I came like you, and I came from a soft skill MOS. And so I didn't go infantry before that. And so that was kind of an issue like later on, I think, just on the team, because they were just like, what the fuck? What the hell's a 91 Echo? And it's like a dental assistant. And they were like, what are we going to do with this dude? Because
death from within.
Yeah. Well, like, you know, I had no senior guy on my team, you know, so I'm learning everything right on the fly. And they were just coming back from up north in Iraq there. And then they were going to Baghdad literally like 2 months later. So it was like, you know, trial by fire.
Well, that was a good time in our life, though. I mean, because that PMT, like the 2004 one, was badass. I mean, there was some gun slinging body stackers in Bravo Company back then. So
it was just fun to go out there in Durango and then hang out. Were you out there when we went? They had that amazing shoot house
to Valhalla.
Yeah, I don't think it exists anymore.
No, it doesn't. It closed. But Rob Pincus, the primary trainer that we had there, he's still in the gun community, just like leading the way. Yeah, but we get together like every year at SHOT Show in Las Vegas and just kind of reminisce a bit. And
were you in that room when him and Lyons were like kung fuing?
No, was that? Oh yeah, actually, I think I was actually like in that room.
The team leader and him, like I think he had like the bullet, like the you know, the freaking blower suit.
Yeah.
And they just started doing their thing, and you know, it's like, oh, I know something, and then I know something too, and then it was going back and forth. It was just like, oh crap! Like I'm 24 years old. I'm like, I don't know any of this.
Oh, were you that young?
Yeah, I was 24 years old, man. So,
dude, that was awesome because that was the PMT where we had like legends like Pat Flalley and Hal Grace, and so a lot of Muay Thai kicking, a lot of headshots and mass cads all the time, and just straight up thuggery and bludgeoning. That was awesome. Like, I'm alive today, and I'm sure you are. You've been in even worse gunfights than I have. Probably because of that training. I mean, it just kind of instills a warrior spirit if you didn't have it already. And then I just remember a lot of Hal's sayings, like, well, one of them was like, might you have to? And then it would be this long string of things. Crawl commando style across a spy's rope between two LMTVs whilst being shot at. I mean, and then of course today may be your Medal of Honor day. I mean, so it just always made you want to commit to the training and go home bloody and sweaty, and it was good times. Yeah, love my BCO days.
I'm laughing because anytime somebody brings up Hal Grace, I always think about him. Like, he had a fucked up back, you know, like for some, you know, obviously he's smaller or whatever, but you know, he held his own for so many years, obviously, but he just like, he would tweak something here or there and then like be out for the count for a couple days until you get out like a cortisol shot or something, you know. But we're at the Mount site at Carson, and they're doing some like PT, and Rob McCaslin was telling me this story where like Hal is like trying to do like, you know, like breaching techniques and things like that, incorporating it into PT. You know, obviously he's famous for the Hal X and that stupid crap, but then he's like going up to the second story, and he's like trying to grab like the railing from the outside of that brick. There's a house or whatever, and so he's just like trying to do this Spider-Man crap, and just like falls like 2 stories down, like on his bad back. He's just like, okay, we're gonna take a little break. I'm gonna need a little time here, but we'll get back to it. And then he would always constantly fuck himself up, like trying to show stuff, because he was very agile for like how small he is and spry. You know, he's just like doing everything. But those are the stories that I just imagine between that and then him just giving me shit when I was thinking about getting out. But other than that,
those were days.
Yeah, but no, I totally agree. I think that the training and the repetition, like when things really did hit the fan, like obviously you're always going to have that gut check, but the calmness that you get, I think in a sense of like that, the practice of kind of putting your game face on. And then when things hit and like kind of when other people's blood pressure and everything else would rise. I just remember, do you remember Holcomb from when we were in the, and he was one of those guys where he was a CAG guy and he brought it down. Like I think it was just like being present, if you go like Buddhist style on
absolutely
things, where you're just like in that moment and you just concentrate on what's in front of you. And it definitely kind of brings you down to the place where you can be most effective and get what you need to get done accomplished. And so like, I'm always thankful for some of those tips along the way that these guys that were old school, that you wouldn't think that a first sergeant would be, into like Buddhism and like incorporating that into your training and stuff like that, and kind of giving you the tools to succeed, like moving forward, not only in like military, lifestyle, but just like in general on coping mechanisms, on stressors and things like that. So, so 25 years, man, it's crazy. And, you know, doing the Camino and, obviously, I don't know, it's on one hand, we do so much in I consider is a lifestyle, right? And it's not a job.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
In retrospect, looking back on it, do you feel like you did enough in your personal life to keep those relationships going, or was that time more about you and defining who you are?
Oh man. Kind of a bit of both, because like when I had gone SF, I hadn't really met anyone else that had been SF. So because a lot of guys go from infantry unit and then they'll go to Ranger Regiment and then you don't hear from them, and then maybe they go SF. But and then especially when I came from Cav land, like no one goes SF from there, and I'm sure probably from your field. Even fewer did.
I think I'm the only, the second one to ever have done it. There might have been somebody after, but
so there's a lot of proving myself that I could do it, and then and I think fieldcraft. I think growing up in Alaska helped a lot, just with enduring the suck, and like having that big North Carolina green tick on your back, and then it raining. And then like, oh, okay, now we carry the fattest guy on the team off the objective. 2 kilometers, great. So that was like, I think probably halfway through the Q course, it became hey, okay, this is just who I am. Like, this is where I belong. So I'm going to be here now. And then like most of my time in group was just me being there for the guys on my left and right. So like as a 18 Bravo brand new weapons sergeant, once I figured out that, hey, okay, cool. So once a week I count all the ammo I have here, and then I count, make sure I have 12 guns, or 12 long guns, 12 short guns or pistols, and then and 12 nods, and we're good to go. So like after a few years on a team, I'm like, I could probably give a little more to the regiment. So then like you and we went to 18 Fox course at the same time. And so then that was an additional way to give back to the regiment. And plus I didn't want some weirdo 18 Fox to like come to our team. So they're like, yeah, well, Neil's gone. So now what? I'm like, well, I'll go to the Fox course, because I don't want some whack job coming to the team and messing up the mojo. So that's why I went. And then after a while, they said, okay, you've been on a team 5 years, you have to go to SWIC now. I'm like, oh no, I'm going to S5. And then did that, and then when that was done, they said you got to go to SWIC. Then I went to the warrant course. I just always wanted to stay in group, stay in a team as long as I can. And once I figured out that my body was slowing down, and maybe not my brain so much, but like guys come out of the course the last couple of years I was getting out or planning my exit, they were smarter than I was when I came into the group, faster, stronger, like just like they all wore medium t-shirts. Like by the time I left group, I'm like, what the hell? It's like everyone coming out of the Q course wears a medium t-shirt. And so then I'm like, yeah, it's probably just time for me to leave. And then when people were like starting to view me as the old guy, when I didn't think I was really an old guy, but I wasn't necessarily broken, but there were parts of me that were definitely stiff and sore. You start slowing down on runs, and it's definitely time to hand over the torch. And then you really start thinking, I'm like, okay, cool. What am I going to do next?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of guys, they just say, well, I'm going to maintain this lifestyle or bump up my house a couple $100,000, get a boat, get a new Jeep, get all the toys. And I had all that, but I don't know. Like at the same time, I had a real yearning to travel and see the world, because we've been sent to so many like not awesome parts of the world. It'd be nice to kind of go to somewhere a little more awesome. Like there's parts of Africa I'd love to go to. There's a lot of parts of Africa I've been to, and and I'm like, I'd like to go anywhere else in those places. So, but and there's a lot of places I'd like to like. As soon as I have a couple old Terps in Iraq, that I said, just let me know as soon as I can come back as a tourist, and I will fly in. There are definitely some places I want to check out, and just kind of be immersed in that moment and kind of just let go of it. And cause you know that there's that veterans organization where guys who are wounded on the battlefield, like they like lose their limbs in a gunfight, or that like when they're ready to, this organization will fly them back in the combat zone so they can kind of check out on their own. Like, all right, cool. Like I was torn out of this situation without my knowledge in some cases, or willingness. Now I get to leave Afghanistan or Iraq on my own to prosthetic feet or under my own circumstances. So just kind of go there, re-immerse themselves in it, and then extract themselves on their own terms. So I think it'd be kind of cool to be able to do that in a way with myself, but just maybe with a backpack and doing some baller guy while I'm there and getting some goat grab.
This may sound like an odd question, but did you find Iraq interesting, beautiful as a place?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I did too. From a historical perspective, like this is the cradle of civilization for like 300 years. Like math, science, all our stars are named at Arabic names because this part of the world was that advanced, you know?
Just living within the Fertile Crescent. And I mean, it's cool. Like you do trips. Okay, we're going to go to the AOB. Well, we got to cross the Euphrates to do that. Or, got to go across the Tigris. And it's just cool, man. I mean, reading about pre-biblical things and then being there and meeting people and interacting with them and then showing up at their doorstep late at night, like, and taking like all the men out of the village. Like it is crazy. Yeah, I love it. I absolutely like to go back as a tourist someday, when the situation chills out a bit.
Yeah, no, it's a unique place. And I think, obviously the people kind of got screwed in a sense of just the insecurity of their livelihood and their life, like it's sad when, outside influences are kind of meddling in your backyard, so to speak, and you're the one paying the brunt price for it, as far as like just being able to walk down the street like a normal person, not having to worry about a car blowing up on you and things like that. I mean, it just puts things into perspective. And anytime that I hear, you know, like back in the States when people are just like, oh my God, you know, like this is the worst we've ever seen and this and that. I'm like, yeah, we had this thing called the Civil War. I would beg to differ, you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
we still have more in common than we don't. Until that
Yeah.
changes,
Absolutely.
that's we just have to sit down with each other and respect the difference of opinion, even though we might
Yeah.
not, you know, we just might not understand it based on our life experiences and how things are shaping per se. But I think one thing is unique in that sense is there's a general respect for the military, regardless of what side of the fence you sit on politically. And I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah. I
And
agree.
like you said, like small town vibes, big cities, you know, like if you say something or mention something and that's, it kind of, it describes your character without having to say much, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm always appreciative of that, you know. I think we collectively as veterans probably have to do a better job of bridging that gap to kind of prove common misconceptions in a sense of Hollywood portraying everybody that's been to war is just completely screwed up. And I think
Sure.
people like you, people like myself are kind of leading that charge, but we need more folks to chip in on that.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure, like with the travels that you've done with van life, with Camino, like those people generally probably don't, you know, the common ground
Dude.
is so different, but you were still able to share an experience, and I think that's
Yeah.
super important.
Yeah. Yeah. They all want to know what it's like or what it was like. And I try to tell them, like, they should at least understand, like, at the basic level, like, as a traveler, like, you quickly see that people are, like, all over the planet. They have the same trials and tribulations. They may worried about food, water, shelter, and then sometimes that, like, in some places that food may be just like, hey, where's the next handful of rice coming from, or where could I even get some water, not even potable water, and then some might be worried about, like, where's the truck that's going to fill my pool going to come from. But we're all there on the spectrum, and like you said, we're definitely more alike than we are dissimilar. So,
Like, what was your biggest takeaway from, let's go with the Camino part first, in a sense of the people you interacted with and maybe some preconceived notions that you might have had, like going into the experience?
yeah, I was expecting everyone to kind of be like they're going to be through hikers or stuff like that. Like, hey, these are like PCT like level. The Camino is nothing like that. So when I showed up there's people who don't know how to walk with trekking poles. Some have just left an office job. Dentists, lawyers, housewives, businessmen, students, gap year kids, um, divorcees, like the whole gambit of, like, humanity just dropped onto, like, priests, just an incredible array of people, and then to walk with them and to hear all their stories, which for me was really good, coming from, like, a background for, like, where for probably the last 20 over a couple decades, like, only the people I interacted with were infantrymen, special forces guys, military in general, and then to kind of, like, watch what I say into my daily discourse, and then, like, jokes I would maybe say, or like, oh, okay, like, look at the audience, definitely know your surroundings, and then listening to their stories, like, man, I never thought that, like, I don't even know anyone who has a political view like that, or a view of the world like that, or like, oh, that's what you think about what we were doing in Iraq, or what we are doing in Africa or Afghanistan. Really, really interesting. So I'd like to think that I was able to just share a glimpse of a life that they hadn't experienced or ever had to think about. And then likewise, like I had never thought about what it might be like to be a college admissions person at a university. I'm like, oh, I suppose I could see how you would have that opinion, or an X-ray technician from Australia or something like that. And then all the different stories of why people are there walking. That is neat, because I think the first year I walked the Camino, 300,000 pilgrims were logged through Santiago de Compostela, the official ending point. There's an additional ending point, but so people go through the pilgrim office there, and then they kind of jot down data like sex, age range, where they come from, and then why they were doing it, whether it's for spiritual purposes, physical fitness purposes, or whatever. And 300,000 people walked that year in 2017. And that's 300,000 different life stories, 300,000 different reasons for being there. Like all walking. And what's cool about it is that everyone has like a start point, and then they're moving along this entire way. And they say that on the Camino, I'm going to get this wrong. The first third of the walk is for your body. The second third is for your heart. And then for your mind. And then the last third is for your heart. And you kind of hit these different towns and stages, and you can kind of feel a change within you. And then you're growing closer to these people, and then you're seeing them evolve. And every day, people ask me why I did it a second time. And I tell them, like, well, imagine, if you will, like you are transported across the planet, and you're walking, and you have a tough day, and then you come into a town you've never been to before in your life. And then someone calls out your name, and you're looking through a sea of people, and you see friends, somehow amazingly, from your travels, and then they call you over, they hug you, they kiss you, and they're genuinely concerned on how your body is doing. How's your body? How's your shoulders? How's your hips? How's your knees? How's your feet? How's your blisters? And then, okay, and how do you feel inside? Like, how are you doing today? How are you doing? There's nowhere in the world where that happens. Like, I don't go to the grocery store and anyone they may say, hey, how you doing? Like if they know me, but they're not generally concerned about my actual health and well-being. And that's incredible. And then to have that in a complete different setting. So when you're experiencing like new sights and sounds and smells, food and beverage, and then be immersed in that, it's a pretty incredible experience. And it's humbling to be on that journey also. So
do you think it softened you up a little bit I know that, you did something for 25 years plus, you're in this kind of microcosm of the overall society, and then you get out into the real world and you're actually realize that you're kind of a minority in how you view the world.
Oh yeah.
And then, you go on things like this, and you don't look at people on the issues that they particularly are into. You look at them as just people, and yeah. I don't know. From my perspective, just knowing you for a long time, and I think you're just like, you got some zen about you. That's for sure. Just in a sense of like, live and let live kind of scenario going on, and I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to be walking and not looking at hands, and like seeing people with a backpack and not like, how like we just walk in a room or a situation and you're just scanning all the time. You're just scanning. You're just scanning for a different reason now. Like you're scanning to see if you know the person, but you're not looking at their hands. You're not. It's nice. And then I think you're just walking, and you kind of settle into your own breath and cadence with your trekking poles and everything, or the conversations you have, or I don't know. People talk about the strangest things, and then they're like dissociated from the real world they're like Camino based and more globally based. And then sometimes they'll dabble in like, hey, this last month I wasn't able to sell as many cars as I wanted, so I didn't know if I was going to be able to make this trip. I think if I had a little bit of money set aside, or like, oh yeah, as soon as I go back, I pick up this new job in the corporate world, and I'm really stressed about it, just coming out of college. And I'm like, wow, yeah, that's coming up in 3 weeks. So yeah, I don't know. I just think it's cool how like people, for whatever reason, and a million different reasons, they decide to just book a flight across an ocean and go start walking an ancient pilgrimage route. I mean, some have super deep like reasons, like, hey, I want to see why the universe took my loved one from me, or like, why is this friend of mine stricken with this incredible disease, or like, who am I going to be when I grow up? And then you got me just bebopping around like, oh man, look at this meat. They have different sausage than we have.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
So what was, I mean, there's probably so many memorable moments, but can you maybe narrow it down to like one or two significant moments on those treks that you had with people? Something happened that just like, when I ask you, like, just pops right in your head, and then also like the weirdest thing that happened to you on these trips.
Yeah, well, I remember when I was first crossing the Pyrenees, just thinking like I could literally be walking like where Napoleon was like forced marching his troops over the mountains. I mean, just how wild is that? Or Charlemagne or El Cid, like coming back. And then looking and seeing how peaceful it is now. It's one of the most tranquil places in the planet. Like you're just crossing the Pyrenees and you're just hearing the bells tied around goats and sheep and horses and cattle up there. Just this tinkling, but it's like down below you because the cliffs are so steep. And when I first crossed, it was all completely socked in with fog and rain and a little bit of sleet. So it was just it was surreal. And then so that was awesome. Coming into Pamplona, a walled city, like I immediately like am thinking like, well, I mean, repel, like this is probably where they shot arrows off of or dumped boiling oil. And then what's neat is like because my Camino family on that trip was quite expansive. So then knowing, it's fun to think of when I met people or the first time I saw someone, like, hey, I remember meeting this guy by this fountain. And we were just filling up water bottles. We just said hi, but then we became super close friends 2 days or 100 kilometers down the road. There's this place called the Cruz de Ferro. Maybe about halfway through the Camino, and you spend a couple days climbing an elevation to get to it, and then where we stayed that last day before we got there was maybe only a half-hour walk, but just seeing where it's like a big telephone pole with an iron cross on top, and it's on a mound of rocks, and people just get there, and traditionally they carry a rock from their homeland, and then they put all of their like worries or prayers or intentions into that rock, and then at this cross they just lay it all there. They just lay it down, and they use it as an opportunity to unburden themselves. So like if they're carrying some immense internal burden, they slap it in this rock, put it down there, and just seeing how people, like, they're laughing as they start off walking that morning, and then as they get closer and closer, there's a solemnness that comes over people, and then when they see it, absolute silence, and then they kind of come up, and even if you're in a group, they kind of separate, and they're alone with their thoughts and their feelings for a while, and then they come and lay down their rock, and then 5 kilometers down the road, we're all happy and cajoling again over breakfast. But there's something that happens like right then, and it's a bubbling of emotion, it's really cool to see that, to feel it happen in yourself, see it in yourself, and then see it, and then have that shared experience, and then come down and just enjoy a toast later on is awesome. And then of course when you get to the end, I remember I got to the end, like, so I got Santiago and that was great. But then we decided to walk an additional 100 kilometers to the ocean, the actual true end of the world, which, like, back in the olden days, people thought that that was the end of the world. Everyone is a flat worlder then, or so then so when you get to that yeah, flatter, yeah. So when I got to that, you get to the 0 kilometer post, and I'm like, ah, shit. And my friends are like, what? Like, well, I'm not done walking. And like, dude, you just walked 1,000 miles. I'm like, yeah, now I'm screwed. So what am I going to do now? There's nowhere else to walk. What a lot of people do is they'll just, they'll walk the route in reverse, or they'll just like bust back and like walk it again. There are people there who are just perpetually walking the Camino to get whatever healing that they need, or heal any traumas in their life. That'd be nice, but like an American can only stay there 90 days and they gotta get back to the US. So, otherwise it'd still probably be walking. There's just something really cool about it. Really chill. You'll see a kilometer post and like, oh, cool, 15 kilometers. It means we'll be there in like 3 hours if you walk 5 kilometers an hour. And then you just measure everything by that. And then you start to like, well, okay, so that means I can probably consume 2 beers by the time, like every hour, and I'll just be completely sober and hydrated at the same time. It's funny how, well, it's like all those games we play with MREs and like, I got peanut butter, I want jalapeno cheese. And, it's that kind of mind games you play to motivate yourself down the road a bit. And yeah, but there's definitely some neat moments. Like, I'll go back into France, and it was probably my most excited part of my last Camino, where I walked from Geneva, Switzerland, all the way through France and then Spain. That I was excited to get to this spot, and I remember it being a lot longer, but it turned out it was only about an 800-meter stretch of the path that day, and it was through these old trees, completely leaf covered ground, and just how soft the steps were, and how you could almost have a perfect step walking on that. And so that 800 meters is like my favorite stretch of a 2,500 kilometer journey, is just walking that 800 meters. And it's so fun, and it just really makes your heart swell with like gratitude and peace on that. And I've written about it in other places, and people are like, yeah, I absolutely know the stretch of path you're talking about. It's out of this town, and you just climb out of the town and you're looking over the cemetery and the village, and then it's that, and then you're back up almost like right next to a highway, but you have 800 meters of bliss. That's like my favorite part of the entire journey. And so few people walk the Camino, like in the France section, that like everyone who does everything in Spain, they completely miss out on it. I feel bad about it, but I do love to tell them and share it with them in hopes that they'll want to do it again. But,
way to rub it in, right? You got to make sure that they
yeah, just like yeah, well, this is nice, but the real good stuff is better.
Anything like super strange happened to you along these treks?
Oh, let's see.
Like people, or like weird weather?
There was like a weird. There were some like weirdos that are over there. There's this one guy I met. Let's see. I'd walked a really long, hot day, come into town, and then and I know I was ahead of everyone that I was walking with or in proximity with. I was just outpacing them. Well, then I hear someone holler my name, and like I look over, and it's this buddy of mine who would bust ahead because he had a like torn meniscus or something. It was just kind of hobbling his way across the country. Well, he was sitting with this guy who was wearing like like an old Jesuit robe, and he had a weird hat on, and so I'm sitting there. I'm like, what is going on? And I order beers and ice cream, and then this guy just says, "Hey, my name's Father Joyful," and I'm like, "Your name's not Father Joyful." But so we're just sitting there. I'm eating my ice cream. He's talking. I'm like, "All right, dude, what's your story?" And he's like, "Well," and he just kind of knew, well, the jig's up. So he said, "Yeah, I'm a busker from Santa Monica, and back in the 80s, did a lot of drugs, burned my mind up, and so I've been like living homeless in Santa Monica, and had heard about the Camino himself, saved up his money, got a passport, and had this robe made up, and he just calls himself Father Joyful. Pretty chill dude, and he's pretty much going to walk the Camino. He flew to Spain, and he's just been walking the Camino barefoot. He only goes like 5 kilometers a day. And then if someone takes a picture with him, he like asks for a small donation. So if it's like €1 and then he gets 20 of those a day, he can pay for food, lodging, and transport of his bag to the next town. And I think that was just that was his life plan. That was his 5-year plan, was just be a pilgrim, the barefoot pilgrim priest, Father Joyful. It was weird. And that, what's neat is that like in 2 Caminos, all those kilometers walked, there weren't a lot of bad experiences. There was like one experience where a lady's backpack had been stolen. She had set it down, walked maybe 100 meters away to take a picture of a church, came back and her bag was gone. Well, by the time that story had spread, it's probably only 5 days into Spain. A local backpacking store had said, "Hey, we don't want this kind of press, and we certainly don't want a pilgrim to leave the Camino unexpectedly. So we'll replace all of her equipment for free. Backpack, sleeping gear, like clothing, whatever she needed." And then, unfortunately, she had already bussed her way out. She had called it quits, but that was neat to see, like the Camino, because there's this saying on the Camino, it's the Camino provides. So whatever you need, if you're missing it, even if you don't know you need it, the Camino will provide it to you just when you actually need it, not when you think you want it. Not if it just pops in your head as a fancy, like when you need it, it'll be provided. And that has happened time and time again. And it's really neat to see it. And because like, I think a lot of people go to the Camino having heard the saying, but when they actually see it, feel it, and it's witnessed in front of them, it's amazing to see like what that does to people.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's like it lets them believe in the universe again or something. It's pretty cool.
Would you ever consider living in Europe, like full time?
Yeah, but first we're gonna move to Bali. Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, that's kind of what we want to do this year. We've been Googling a lot of expatting in Bali videos, and it just looks like a chill place to go. Like, just go spearfishing every day, and then you can like bring a huge mahi to a restaurant. They'll cook it for $1 plus rice plus vegetables. I mean, but yeah, Europe. Yeah, I dig it there. But you've lived there.
I'm from there. I mean, my mom's from Germany, and I grew up there for 15, 16 years of my life. So yeah. I mean, I'm definitely into moving back, or at least splitting time. I think with the lifestyle that we had from military time to the lifestyle I've had doing consulting work, throughout the world, like stateside traveling, and then also traveling overseas, my rhythm for life is just so much different than others. And I feel like this pandemic, people got a taste of what like freedom is, right? In a sense of like, I can still be proficient in my job and contribute to the overall greater good of your business and what have you, but I can do that from my house. I can do that from anywhere I choose. and still bring value added to whatever, right? And they finally got a taste, I think, of what a lot of us have had for a while now. And it's very intoxicating to be able to, like you said, like people are getting, like Barbados is giving work permits to folks to work remote to come live on the island, right? Things like that.
Yeah.
So
not too shabby.
The sky's the limit with this stuff, in a sense of being able to fully not just do this like small tourist kind of, oh, I'm going for a week to Bali to go stretch on the beach and, eat cantaloupe fresh, and now you get to really immerse yourself in that culture, in the values of the people, and maybe learn something not only from them, but you also bring value to them as well by showing off your culture and your identity and what you believe in is what's important. So I think a lot more people are going to take this approach to life, because I don't think I'm a capitalist, but I don't think the pace is sustainable long term for folks, because as we see, people from all walks of life, not even American, are feeling the burdens of society and having to need these outlets like the Camino, like van life, like other things to literally check out to kind of find their inner peace, And I think there's something
there's definitely some rebelling against like the man. Like I meet a lot of van life people. They finish college, maybe they enter their first entry level job, and it just sucks. And then they have this huge college debt, and they're like, "What?" Like, and then I gotta try to pay $2,000 for a flat. Like, what? My parents pay $1,000 a month for a mortgage, like on a huge house, and
Do you think the values of the culture of the Camino is in any way in the States in the same way? I know we have like the Appalachian Trail. We have certain things that have been historical in a sense, but I don't know that many people that do those things in that same way anymore.
I was thinking about I thought about the PCT, and then I looked at some of the groups, and I'm like, man, I don't like the way they're trash talking each other, or like, oh yeah, your rucksack isn't light enough. Like, and then I'm like, yeah, 30 pounds, it's not a problem for me. Like, well, it should be 17, or you're not a purist. And I'm like, what? There's a lot of judgment here. Appalachian Trail the same way, the Continental Divide Trail, all trails I'd like to do, but like, they're not. I know they'd be a completely different experience than the Camino, and I actually had a permit to hike the PCT like the very next year when I came back from the Camino, and I passed on it. For one, I had moved to California in the van to start surfing, but two, I was just kind of intimidated. I'm like, man, I just don't like. I come from a culture where you had to constantly be proving yourself and evaluating yourself on like if you could even deserve to be there anymore. And I just didn't want that anymore. I didn't need it at the time. So I passed on that PCT opportunity. Maybe it's something I'd do in the future, but I just don't know.
I'm sorry for lack of knowledge. What's PCT?
Oh, the Pacific Crest Trail. Okay. Yeah, it's the trail that goes from Southern California, right at the border fence, and then goes all the way up into Canada, through the Sierras, through the Mojave, through the Sierras, and then the Cascades into Canada. It's like 2,600 miles or something. It'd be awesome, and I'd love to do it. And but I don't know if that kind of spirit of the Camino would be there. Actually, it would be like if you carry it with you. But and then a lot of people had suggested that, like, hey, well, why don't you like start building a network of places people can stay? Like, we have couch surfing, so you could, for all intents and purposes, start in North Carolina and like walk all the way across the United States to California and just couch surf your way across. I'm like, yeah, I never thought about that, but in Europe, like there's villages every 2 to 3 kilometers, and like maybe like if there's a kilometer post that says 15 kilometers in the next town, people are like, oh, what am I going to do for 15 kilometers? I'm like, just continue to drink water and you'll get there in 3 hours. Like, don't worry about it. But like, you get to Arizona and like next gas, like 176 miles or something. Like, oh, now what am I going to do? I'll build a solar still every like 10 days. And yeah, but I had thought about it and told her the idea of like, well, how cool would it be to bring like a no shit Camino to the United States, and then it'd be and then the places you would stay would be like couch surfing friendly folks who were just cool with like opening their home to people chill enough to like foot it across the United States.
Yeah.
That'd be an endeavor.
Yeah, it's something about the old world, you know, like the ambiance of being in like the Alps and being in the Pyrenees, and you know, you can't replicate that in the States in the same facet, just because we don't have the history. You know, we're still super young.
The discovery of the continent is younger than some buildings that you walk by in I mean, it's just incredible when you think about it. And it's just I'm always just in amazement. Like, I have this thing where if I see a cornerstone that's laid and it's got a date on it, it's fun to just touch that and just kind of think of like what it must have been like to lay this cornerstone in 1450, or touch the wood beam inside a house. Or there's that bar that keeps getting closed down in Booblagan, right across from Biddy Early's. In there they have like a wooden post that separates like the new portion of the bar, which is like built in added on the addition like in the 1700s, and the old portion was built in the 1400s. I just always like to go in there. It's normally just to hold myself up from passing out, but just touch that. I'm like, man, that is badass. This tree was cut down hundreds of years ago. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah.
When I grew up in Heidelberg, and so we have like a lot of history there with being like a college town and stuff. But there's a bar called the Red Ox, the Rode Ochsen, and it's where Mark Twain used to drink. And so they have like a piano in there, all these pictures from like way, way old school. And I was there with my ex at the time, and I don't think she thought it was going to be cool. But then they started like playing the piano, like people that just were there like drinking were playing the piano and singing like show tunes and stuff like that. And she like knew all the words from going to camp like back in the day. So she was like knowing all the stuff, and she actually got into it. She's like, okay, I can understand why this place, like the town and this place, means so much to you, because it's just, I went to high school there. It was a pretty influential time in my life, you know, and it was awesome. Plus, you know, like being able to go drink at like 16 is awesome in a sense. Like legally, you can go and get whatever you want, you know, smoking cigarettes and everything else. It's so stupid, but
it's funny.
Yeah. So is there any difference between the Camino folks and the van life folks as far as what you've seen?
I feel the diversity of the Camino is greater. And then that's just like the walks of life, their occupations. Van life folk tend to be people who, like, there are doctors living in vans and traveling nurses and stuff like that. But a lot of retirees, a lot of people who are just saying, hey, I am cutting strings from society. I'm not going to pay an exorbitant flat rate or mortgage. I want to drag myself out of debt. Or, hey, I have a small pension and I want to live in that. I only have a Social Security check and it's $1,600 a month or whatever. My intention is to live on that while experiencing nature. I think a lot of the people in the Camino, like, fortunately, are able to travel there. So that's a big ticket investment. I mean, the flight in general, and then the kitting themselves out, rucksack, boots, trekking poles. So I think there's not really a monetary difference, but and then they all come back to their normal lives. Like they'll go back to their corporate job, or they'll go back to their private practice, or the job at the factory or whatever. Van life folks seem to be a little more gypsy-ish, like even more so than like a thru hiker or a perpetual backpacker. And I've met some guys who like, so the beach parking lot I basically lived at for over a year in San Diego, it's called Tourmaline Surf Park, right there north side of Pacific Beach.
Okay. Yeah,
and like right up from the pier, like I think right at 2 kilometers. And
so like going north.
So I learned
like where that
north up the coast,
like roller coaster area. You drive that main strip by the water there, and they have like all the bars and restaurants there, and then just keep going from there.
Yeah, you go up, just like get on the beach and walk it 2 kilometers up, and then there's this little strip of heaven called Tourmaline. And it's where I learned to surf. It's where I first popped up on a surfboard. It's where I first broke my first couple boards. That beach parking lot there, huge van life culture. But like old school guys. There's guys, like one guy, I call him the mayor there. Born in Hawaii, surfer dude, got into drugs in like the 90s, went to jail. And then his family moved back to the mainland. So he came back, and then he just lives in a van there. And and then he'll have his kids will be down there and his grandkids. And he just sits there and waves at everybody that comes in. And him and a couple other guys there, when I first came to San Diego and bought a surfboard, I did a little Googling, and Google really failed me here. I'm like, okay, I need a 7'2" surfboard. So I went and got one. And then they just watched me for like 2 weeks, just eat shit in the surf. And then I would come out, and then one day they're like, hey, new guy. I'm like, yeah. Oh, you guys are talking to me. And they're like, hey, do us all a favor. They're like, how long are you planning on surfing out here? I'm like, I don't know, until I can call myself a surfer. And then they said, well, do us all a favor and go get a 10-foot board today.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay. So I did that and came back, and then boop, I think I popped up that same day. And then so then about then is when I became a surfer. But like I'd replaced a fuel pump for my previous van in that parking lot. I slept overnight there once. I normally stealth camped in other parking lots or neighborhoods in the area. But you see all kinds of guys down there in van life. You literally see doctors. Well, surf culture is its own thing, and then layer van life on top of surf culture. So that's the people who are just so damn committed to it that they need a dedicated vehicle to transporting boards and a place to like chill out between like surf transitions, and it's really cool. And then you take those and then layer on top of mountain biking, paddle boarding, like there's all these niches that a van is just a good thing to just chuck everything into, whereas my Jeep Cherokee wasn't cutting it for living in. So then so the van was like a perfect thing for me. But you see a lot of people that might not be choosing van life might have chosen them for a variety of like financial circumstances, life circumstances. You see some people that are doing Prius life because like the money quit rolling in and they didn't have a van, but they did have a Prius. So they're living in a Prius. And then California is crazy with the homeless population anyway. So I'd actually thought about doing a social project where I just become homeless and like kind of document that, like live on the street for like 60 days. I saw that a British SAS guy had done this in London. And I don't know how long his, but at the end of it, he's like, don't give a homeless person money. But I would talk to guys all the time. Like I'd be making my meal is ramen normally, and talking to the guys who were going between all the trash cans and pulling out all the recyclables and asking what they're going to do with them. Like, why don't you turn them in? Like when you have a 35-gallon bag as opposed to like a 100-gallon trash bag, they're lugging all these cans around in. And just kind of figuring out how those guys ended up there. Some guys were like, what are you talking about? Like, I want to live this way. I'm like, okay, well, but you definitely see a lot of mental illness. You see people that have just hit hard times. You see people with substance abuse issues, or just have mental breaks. I mean, like maybe just they've done something and shame overwhelms them and drives them from everything they know. And they're just collecting cans on the beach. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, it's been neat to be there. Well, yeah, like you mentioned earlier, instead of just going somewhere, like I've been to San Diego a couple times, and yeah, of course I'd love to live in San Diego. I've been there twice for like 3 days each. I'm moving there and not knowing like where like you might want to hang out or whatever. But living there on the beach, like I have favorite parking areas in neighborhoods. Like I actually kept a Google document where I would just drop a pin every night for like 2 years of where I was staying. So I knew, and then I would like label it just on my phone every day. I'd roll in at night and then just like drop a pin for that date. So I could kind of see what areas I was using, make sure I wasn't overusing some areas, and then just completely Xing out areas that I didn't want to be in anymore.
Is there
just kind of make an area study of it?
I was going to ask, is there any app for van life folks to be able to like go to like friendly cities that allow you to actually like not get messed with? You can stay here, you can do this, you can do that.
Yeah, there's a couple apps. There's actually a van life app created by a couple van life ventures in San Diego. They host an incredible van life meetup right there in Fiesta Island in Mission Bay, pre-COVID. But their app is nationwide, lets you just drop a pin of a cool place that you've stopped, or like, hey, this is a place you can go and fill up your water jug, or hook up a hose to you and fill up your water, or disperse camp for free. And then there's another app called iOverlander. And that's a really good app. I use that probably the most. And then there's some apps where you can download map data. So before you go into area, you have like a topographic map of how to get there. And then it'll actually do land ownership. So you can tell if it's government land or private land. That's good. There's a handful of apps out there. And I think it's as simple as doing a Google search for van life app. And then there's lots of videos on them. I meant to do a couple of videos on them. I think I'd mentioned some of these apps in previous videos I'd posted, just because my girlfriend and I have found some awesome campsites just based on that alone. Like when I had my mind set on staying in a certain place and then it didn't pan out, she would just hop on the app and, well, there's this place 43 miles away, and we'll go there and it'll be an incredible place. So, and then like you can like write a little review, tell what kind of mobile data usage you're getting there, if you're able to live stream, because a lot of people are working remote now. So it's worked out. Like honestly, the COVID thing has been kind of a godsend or a blessing to us in our relationship. It's allowed us to travel the country, and I was able to go stay with my parents while my mom was going through the first portion of her cancer treatment therapy. So from March to May, we were able to stay with them, and she just worked remotely in the bedroom or in the van. And then when we were done at my parents, we just like kind of hit the road, and we'd hang up a backdrop in the back of the van, and she'll work with clients there, and I'll just go on a walk or something, or going to Home Depot or something.
So did you have to, like, when you met your girl, did she know you were living this kind of lifestyle?
Absolutely. That's so I was like, when I got in California, I was on a few dating websites, and all of them I had this tagline. It was like, warning, I live in a van. If this freaks you out, swipe left. And so you get a lot of people like, you seem like a nice guy, but you live in a van with a deuce. And then and yeah, get swiped the other way. But we met, and we met in Del Mar, right near the racetracks, and had a great first date. And then showed her my van the second date, because she's like, yeah, she's like, I don't actually live here. I live in another town. I'm like, well, my place is right around the corner, because literally my van was parked down the street. And so she's like, not today, buckaroo. But but it's really like, when you find someone that's cool with you living in a van, that's something. Because you might not want to necessarily be with someone who's cool with someone living in a van. Yeah. And but thankfully, she's not a high maintenance person, and she's just down with van life and travel. And she's lived abroad before also, and she's actually from Canada, or born near Toronto. And that's why we're here in quarantine, is to quarantine and then go see her ailing mother. Yeah. And she's she's perfect remote worker, able to work anywhere, and it's pretty cool. And then she travels really well, so super friendly, beautiful woman. So it fits. Yeah, because there's probably 99% of society I wouldn't be cool with. No one wants to be with someone down by the river in a van. We've parked like on the river in the van, had a blast, and then we've had our share of breakdowns, like actual like vehicle breakdowns, where we're just sitting there. There was one where we're outside of Gila Bend, Arizona. It was like 116 in the van, and we had like a half a bottle of water between the two of us, and we're like, man, this sucks. We might die. And limped it into town, and then just vehicle breakdown. You're just traveling. So my van's a 2004 Sprinter. So it's got like 170,000 miles. I replaced the engine like 15,000 miles ago. It blew 2,500 miles after I bought it. So I bought it in Jersey, drove it. It blew up in Las Cruces, New Mexico, $15,000. And then back on the road. And then there's all these little aches and pains that you just have to throw money at. So I'm just driving around in a house, but it's home. Like, we sleep better in the van than anywhere, like any hotel. We restless nights here. Plus we have a skylight right above our bed. So we see all the constellations just moving all night long. And then for the Great Conjunction that just occurred, we could just step right out of the van, and then we're just taking night shots of it. It's been a real blessing. And then for the last 2 months, we've just been living on free government camping lands outside of Flagstaff, Arizona. And then it's only right before the holidays that we decided to get on the road and beat feet to Canada. So it's been a hoot.
Are you going to be trying to drive around in Canada too for a while, or are you?
Well, they just put this new bubble around all the Atlantic states in Canada. So as soon as you enter them, you have to re-quarantine. So we coming from the U.S. into Canada, we had to quarantine for 14 days. We just don't want to re-quarantine going east. I suppose we could drive through like Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, which are awesome, but it's totally winter in those places. So maybe not. I think like waking up in the van when we were in Flagstaff, it was 1 degree one day, and because like our heater wasn't as warm in the van as it normally is. We have a diesel heater that runs off the fuel tank and or the vehicle's fuel tank, so it cranks out some good heat. But when it's 1 degree outside, it's probably, I think it was, I don't know, 52 in there. Like, it's a little chilly in here. And you look at the thermometer outside, I'm like, it's 1 degree. Like, what that? Yeah. So, but at the same time, we've been trying to camp when it's 106 degrees in Palm Springs, and Like we're going to die. So let's just go get a cheap hotel and drink margaritas in the pool all weekend. But they have air conditioning systems on vans are available, but it's just however much money you're willing to throw at the problem. So
got it.
But yeah, when it's 106 degrees, I don't need to. That's like it's Iraq hot. So
have you been keeping in touch with anybody from group or from the military, and like what have they mentioned anything to you regarding like your lifestyle or anything like that? Or
yeah, there's quite a few guys. I just got back on Facebook after a long ban. I just had to make a new account, but it's funny to see all the guys like, oh, you're still alive. So a lot of them follow me on Instagram. And like when I first bought a van, like guys were like, what the shit, dude? Like, and they offering me jobs like, hey man, like here's a job, pays $100,000 a year. Like I'm like, yeah, I appreciate it. But like, I'm good right now. And like, you can't be good because you're not riding your Harley anymore. And they're like, no, I'm good. Just living in the van, surfing. And then when I get together with them, like I go to SHOT Show and I have to wear a suit when I go out there, and then guys are like, whoa, who the hell are you? You look like a hobo ran into Louis Vuitton or something. Yeah, but it's fun. I mean, like we're just traveling, and so many people, they wait until they're after 65, and then they buy the RV, and that RV gets like 8 miles per gallon. Yeah. The van gets 23 miles per gallon. So we're able to travel around if we want to, and then just flat out sit in a spot for 2 months if we want to also. So it's given us a lot of freedom, and then just an opportunity to get to know each other and just to know ourselves in whatever setting we want. I mean, we could like we talk about like leaving here and then going to Key West. Like, let's just go chill down there for a while, and then when it starts warming up, maybe head anywhere the mosquitoes aren't bad. Right. But like we were down in Four Corners, down by Cortez, Colorado last summer, and strangely, like I lived in Colorado 15 years. I'd never been down there. And we're really had a blast just like camping on this cliff. And then a couple days later, we're in Telluride, and Sarah had never been above 10,000 feet elevation on land before. So that was a neat thing to check off her list. And then, we just kind of lazily toured the Western states, this last summer. I mean lazily.
Yeah, it's awesome that you can just like set your schedule like that and like really take your time, and based on how you feel, you don't feel rushed, you know?
Yeah.
Would you recommend the lifestyle to others that might be on the fence?
I would. Yeah. Especially like guys coming from our background. Like, what a awesome way to kind of disconnect or reinvent yourself, or intentionally choose a life like different than what you feel you're destined. Like, because how many times do we know guys like, okay, cool, I'm coming up on retirement, got to start looking for this contractor jobs, and then I'll go work at Northcom, or I'll go work at Northrop Grumman, or like either a contractor or a GSA job. And great jobs, great ways to continue to provide for yourself and the family. But like, if you can actually live on like a little more modest income than you might traditionally be used to, or just a small pension, it gives you, it like unchains you from like what we just assume we're going to have to go into. Because there's a lot of times like the guys are hustling, they're like, I have to find that contractor job. And I chose to not. Like when I went on that first Camino, I was telling people, okay, when I come back, we'll discuss it again. And then I came back, and I just never called them back. And then when I also came back, some people didn't call me back. So there's missed opportunities, or opportunities that you just forego. But those open up other opportunities and doors to other adventures. And like, because if you get sucked into some jobs, you're just kind of, it's like when a guy becomes a level 3 or something, and like, well, I was a shoot him in the face kind of guy. Then I went to level 3 course, so I'm just like kind of on that track the rest of my career. They're like, oh, now I'm the intel nerd, so I got to go this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel the path you chose has given you the same kind of meaning as you had like before, or maybe even enhanced it along the way, as far as like your depth in relationships and kind of the most critical thing I think most people think about regular folk is this, that they're a little bit, their word doesn't mean as much. You know what I mean? Like somebody's like, oh, it's great to meet you. Here's my card. Meet you for coffee before we leave, the conference and this and that. And it never pans out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's allowed me to just slow down. Like the last few years, or during the war years, especially, like it was balls to the wall, full tilt boogie. I mean, we were coming back from deployment, maybe going a couple weeks of block leave, and then go right into a PMT, and then be back within 6 months, back to back to back. Some units worse than others. This like van life, or just Camino van life, surf life, just kind of allowed me to regain control of my life. Because like, I mean, some guys love it, and I loved it definitely at the time. But like, when there's that little voice inside you that's like whispering, like, "Hey, you need to slow down. You need to crank it back a little." But then our culture, like the culture we were living in, like doesn't allow you to. Like, no, you have to level up. You have to maintain the edge, maintain relevancy. That's like you feed off it also, but it also feeds off of you. So this gave me an opportunity to kind of like wrestle it back, because like as soon as I get on a plane and go somewhere, when I'm alone and quiet with my thoughts, I start Googling other places to be. Like I was working in Nigeria on a gig, and that entire time, like I was planning a trip to the Philippines, and then as soon as I came back, turned in my leave slip, went to the Philippines for 8 weeks. And so I'm like, so I was thinking, well, I could always like live like that, like work somewhere for a year or 6 months at a time, and then go play somewhere, or I could just like play. It's like the old, years ago, 30 years ago or so, or 25 years ago, I was in Amway, and they said, what's the difference between a hobo and a doctor? A hobo's got all the time and none of the money, and a doctor's got all the money and none of the time. You need to find that happy balance. I'm like, yeah, cool. So like, I guess I feel I've kind of found that. I mean, I'm not going through trash cans, collecting cans for recycling. But and I have some time there also available. So
do you think your more authentic self was your military side of Mike, or now?
I feel now, I think, or like it served me well when I was in the military, because like from a child, I wanted to be a Green Beret. And then I think you just get to a point where you're able to pass that torch, or pass the rucksack to the younger generation and say, cool, now it's my time to sit on the porch and whittle things. So I think this is me now. I think I would have not really been faking the funk if I was still running and gunning now, but I'd always be yearning to be somewhere else. And now I don't really, there isn't a yearning to be anywhere. Like I am where I am, and if I want to change, I can mosey on down the road a bit.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel like I've come into my own as a person, like way after, And it had nothing to do with the military being good, bad, or indifferent, right? It was just a matter of you were amplifying those characteristics that you needed for that particular environment. And then when you didn't need that anymore and you left and you just had to reintegrate yourself into regular life again, you just kind of figure out and recalibrate your life according to what the needs and wants are within your life at that particular time. So whether it's traveling or getting the job that you want or having a family and living a certain way, you know, like those things are constantly changing and evolving. And I think we're definitely better suited for change because that's all we know in the long run. And so it doesn't matter what side of the planet you're going to wake up on. The fact that it's another day and, you know, you had a pretty risque life as far as a lot of things are concerned, and you get to wake up every day still. I think that's always a gift.
Yeah. Well, and then I think just the flexibility that like living in that environment taught us, because I totally relied on it. Because when I exited the military, even though I was intentionally trying to live a more chillax lifestyle, it was difficult. And there's even times where I feel lost, where I'll wake up and oh man, why aren't I doing that? Like that, it just seems like that's what I should have been doing. And then you just kind of reset yourself. I'm oh, because I love what I'm doing right now. And it's chill and I absolutely appreciate it. But then there's the parts that well, maybe I could be contributing more. But you're just snap linking into the monster and I don't need that.
So
there's guys more suited to it. Totally now. If I were to be re-injected in that environment, guys come on, man, what are you doing? You need to pull security or something. Oh, my bad.
Yeah. I'm 10 years removed. So this year's,
but you've really, I feel have had it's been a fast paced 10 years for you. Cause didn't you have, I thought, well, you were dabbling in real estate for a while and then, didn't you, you ran a social networking group or two, and
so it's
you've had quite a few endeavors.
Yeah, no, it's definitely I had to kind of figure things out.
The Donner Tribe.
Yeah. I had a little networking kind of thing where it was just getting basically party promoter, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Where you just get people together that are more in the business professional mindset, but they're trying to have decent relationships to be involved with each other and what have you. But it just, with the contracting I was doing, I had to kind of rely on other people to kind of handle those events sometimes. And it just, you can't expect somebody to do stuff for you in that capacity. And
Sure.
It's just not going to run itself in that sense. So got back into full-time, consulting, contracting stuff. Tried again with a kebab truck, which was, in hindsight, probably one of the worst decisions I've ever made in my life.
Okay.
Just in a sense of the time and effort for what you got and picking right partners and stuff like that. So, just going in with expectations being high and knowing that you're not going to make a lot of money essentially at the beginning, and just things like that. And a lot of overhead from the get-go and buying equipment and stuff like that, and then trying to make that money back. And then after that, it was just grinding. Had to figure out what I wanted to do, really fine-tune certain things in my life. And basically I kept contracting and went back to school, and I just finished within the last year. So I have my MBA now, which is good.
Oh, cool. Congrats.
Thanks. Yeah. No, I wanted to go back because I still had GI Bill money left over. So I was like, well, I might as well use
Yeah.
it before they take it away.
Yeah.
So with that, now I'm really pushing hard into investment banking. So I've been studying for that and trying to get into that route. But sky's the limit. I'm still pushing for that stuff. But I'm still in real estate. I have a small like investment group where we bought an investment property in Denver and slowly building that out. I just got officially getting like a permit to build for the backyard where we're building like a mother-in-law suite on top of a new garage. So it'll be like 1,000 square foot
cool.
Apartment on the back end of your house where you can rent it out or short-term, long-term, or
Yeah.
just have a guest house in
Good idea.
in the heart of Denver because the zoning allows for that. So that's really cool. And then if that goes well and I can domino that and show proof of concept, I definitely want to get, folks that I know that I give a shit about and be like, hey, let's pull this together, like allocate resources collectively, and down the road, like we'll be set, for quite some time if we work together. I think that's the biggest kind of drawback I see with a lot of us is that we just kind of want to go our own separate ways, which is cool. But then I ran into some guys like one of my good friends on my team, Jake Anderson, is in New York.
Yeah.
So he's,
was that where he is?
yeah. So he was working for insurance and doing like like hardcore modeling. Like he's a big super nerd. And then I ran into another guy that was from Charlie Company, 3rd Battalion, and he runs his own construction company that's like a veteran-owned business and all that stuff. He got out, super nerdy guy too. And these guys, we all kind of did our own thing so far, and like we're starting to see this kind of assimilation back together because like I think ultimately we just miss each other. Like we miss people we can joke around with, and nobody's gonna take, like, they might be butthurt for like 2 seconds, but then they get over it because we have that kind of relationship. And I think it's so rare in the real world to know somebody for 15, 20 years. And in that sense, and we have true depth and respect for our relationships.
Absolutely.
That I think people try to emulate, but they're never going to get there. There's no way the hours that we've spent together, even though we weren't on the same team, like we just have difference in from the real world that people, not even family people, like have the same kind of depth that they're looking for like that. So
they try to recreate that in the corporate world, like on like team building getaways. I'm like, you can't like recreate that. I mean, you can try for a weekend, but like you're not recreating a 6-month combat deployment. Or
when you're literally around people that aren't your immediate family for 6 to 8 months on end, like how do you couldn't even do that in any job. Maybe a construction job where you like move somewhere else to do that particular like big building or something, and you're all like hanging out.
Oil rig construction. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's just so hard. So it's really cool to see guys coming back, and I've been slowly getting, like, once I get in cahoots with, I would call it some real money, like in New York and some other places, I'm really gonna push for just some education on what other opportunities are available outside of contracting. Because I think a lot of people are just so skeptical about leaving what they know because this is easy in a sense for them. But I would consider you've done that, and in your own right, you're a creative, like you put out a lot of content, and I think is valuable to other folks. And I'm happy to know that there are guys that we know that are out there that are collective that are doing different things, that we aren't all like, we're not a monolith, right? Like we have differences in opinions. We have differences of ideas on like what is success, what's happiness. And that, I think that's really cool to be able to still come together and shoot the shit like we're doing now and whatever else. I mean, it's been a while, but I'm always humbled to, hang out with folks that I've known forever like that. And, no, it's, I don't take it for granted, especially now, like you never know.
You don't. Yeah. And then in an age where connection should be so easy, like somehow we get so disconnected. I mean, yeah. You mentioned Jake Anderson. Last time I saw him was at just before I retired, I started a wine meetup group in Colorado Springs, and then he and his girlfriend like walked in. I'm like, what is going on, man? Like it was really good to see him. I hadn't seen him for several years.
Yeah, like it sucks because I don't think I used to think that the group ball was like a place where like we would all be able to get back together, but I don't think and maybe just group is just a little bit different now or what have you, but
oh yeah, it's different.
Well, just in a sense of like that was the spot where like retirees and everybody would just get together and like you pay homage to the old
I love that.
You sat down, like I think we were like some of the last people. I think Aaron Bank came to like the first ball that we were at, and so like to have that kind of lineage, like we have so much history in the last 20 years and like we're a part of that, and I'm super proud and humbled to be part of that group, right? Because nobody knows, like even the guys now, they're getting in on these tail end of this stuff. They don't know, man. Like they're bummed that they don't have the experiences that we had.
Yeah, well, they should be, because like we had some awesome ones. I mean, they'll have the next wars that are coming. They'll have their own cool things, but and then now they're all free fall. So
I didn't know that. Is that new?
Yeah, free fall for all. Yeah, they like everyone who comes out of the Q course is free fall.
Oh yeah, I do recall that now. That's like part of the pipeline.
So stupid. It's cool. I guess I just wish they would have done it when I was in. But
jealousy.
But yeah, I got free fall in the last few years in the Army, so I was happy. But
yeah, there's a couple of videos I think you were filming with like a GoPro or something, and you just ate shit. And I was like, man,
I've had some incredible crashes, man. Like I'm a true believer in the power of the PLF because I'm alive today because of it. Even though I've done feet, face, ass before.
Jesus.
Yeah. Hey, Justin Huffnagel, did you see he's the 2nd Battalion commander?
Oh, I didn't know that. No.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was on the compound a few months ago, I saw that he was there. And then through Instagram, someone let me know that Matt Cheney is the 3rd Battalion commander.
Really cool.
Yeah. And then Round's the group commander. Yeah. A lot of neat names. Like we all grow up, I guess. We stick around long enough.
Yeah, definitely have to. That's the second team leader I've had that was a battalion commander. So
yeah,
time goes, man.
It does. It flies.
Well, seriously, man, I appreciate the time. Hopefully you got a little something out of it. It was good catching up with you. And
yeah, thanks for having me on.
We'll definitely have to. I mean, if you're up for it, man, I'm trying to get more of a discussion group going sometimes and seeing if maybe we can talk offline, but if that's something you'd be interested in talking like politics or certain things to kind of take points of view and maybe have like a kind of a decent discussion on current events and things like that, and maybe giving a green suitor perspective on certain things. I think it might be interesting to folks to hear folks that know how the sausage is made, so to speak, and maybe elaborate a little bit on that. Just something to think about in a sense, where you can contribute or what have you. But
yeah, keep me in mind.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, man. We'll sign off here, but yeah, I hope that, like I'm definitely going to put some of this stuff out there for you. And I'm an idiot. I didn't record the video for the first half, and I hit it on the halfway.
Oh, okay.
But I've got all the audio, so we'll just put a nice, sexy picture of yours with the van or something for the first like 35 minutes, and then we'll go into the dialogue. But I'll be sure to like update it.
Just have a rolling, scrolling, like I don't know, slideshow or something.
If you send me a snippet of a video of the van and you just driving, I can just put that on like repeat and just have you talking.
Yeah, I'll Yeah, I'll figure it out.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again,
Cool,
man.
dude.
The show is produced and engineered by myself, Ben, out of Denver, Colorado. Be sure to subscribe to our social media or wherever you consume content, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Big shout out to Mike Xavier. Thank you so much for letting us use your music as part of our show. Be sure to check him out as well on social media. And stay tuned for the next show.